This presentation is an analysis of the mass society and factory life in Great Britain during the Industrial Revolution by Alanna and Emily.
The Industrial Revolution is defined as a period of change and innovation, and there was a large focus on the new technological advances of the time. During the Industrial Revolution, there was more class distinction, and the middle class split into the upper and lower classes. There were no income taxes on the people, so this led to a bigger gap between the wealthy and the poor. The upper middle class consisted of factory owners, doctors, lawyers, government employees, and they were basically equal to the upper class. They were more educated because they had more money and time to send their kids to school. These are the aristocrats or the upper class, and you can tell because their house looks more extravagant and they're dressed nicely. This is the middle class, and you can tell because they're still nice and have a home and children, so they have money to support themselves. These are the peasants or the lowest class, and you can tell because they don't have homes or nice clothes or any money. The lower middle class consisted of skilled workers, tool makers, factory overseers, and they lived in the city due to their work in businesses. The rich upper middle class men became less focused on work and did more for their own enjoyment, like tennis, golf, and other activities. They did so in order to show that they didn't need to work to keep up their elaborate lifestyles. Children began to be seen separately as boys and girls. Little girls were raised with dolls, while boys were raised with guns and other games. Boys were more likely to go to school and be educated, while girls would stay home and help their mothers. The aristocrats were rich landowners who gained power during the Agricultural Revolution. As a result of the Industrial Revolution, manufacturers and entrepreneurs gained control. The aristocrats still had power, just a considerably less amount. Marriage becomes an act of love, rather than a need to survive and reproduce. Before the Industrial Revolution, men and women married at a younger age because they needed the extra labor. Women married around 14 to 16, but after the Industrial Revolution, they were married between their 20s and 30s. Population growth increased as marriage was now for love and at a younger age, so more children were born. More people also wanted children for extra labor. Conditions may have been worse for the lower class, but the upper and middle classes had better health and a lower mortality rate. As we read in the Manchester DBQ, massive population growth had both positive and negative effects depending on the social class and the perspective. As the population increased, so did urbanization as the people moved to cities in order to find work in the factories.
Life in the factory was hard with long days and horrible treatment of workers. In the lower class, men and children participated in factories where they had little time to rest and eat in a harsh environment. Lower class girls were seen as equal to boys and had no special treatment. Women rarely worked outside of the house. They needed to take care of their children and do chores.
Children were ideal factory workers because their hands were smaller and it allowed them to do more.
Luddites were 19th century textile artisans who protested against newly developed labor replacing machinery from 1811 to 1817. They were unhappy that the new machines threatened the work of the artisans and left them jobless. They made random attacks of breaking machines as a revolt, and the revolts/opposition failed and many people continued to be unemployed. Poorhouses were tax-supported housing for people who couldn't support themselves. It's the welfare of that time period. Each person or family would rent a single room and share these homes with many others. They were dingy and run down. They provided gross and poor living environments. Chairists were from the working class that sought political reforms from 1838 to 1858. They gained support and signed petitions, then presented them to the House of Commons. Their 6 requests were a vote for every man over 21, a secret ballot to protect electors, a man may join Parliament regardless of his amount of property, annual Parliament elections, payment of Parliament members, and equal weight of importance for each vote.
Many of the works of Charles Dickens were reflecting on his childhood. They were from the perspective as if the reader were a child during that time. Some of his works include David Copperfield, Little Dorrit, and Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist, for example, described the working conditions of chimney sweeper boys during the Industrial Revolution. He also described other conditions for all children working. Some economic policies that emerged during this time were tariff protection, which meant there was prices on imported goods so that the people were forced to buy only Britain's goods. Another was Ricardo's iron law of wages. This stated that the lower class only needed enough money to prevent starvation, and that the upper class could keep all of the money and live extravagant lifestyles.